And we're continuing to watch these pictures from Quebec City, where leaders of 34 nations in the Western Hemisphere have gathered to talk trade as they talk about setting up a free trade area of the Americas.
They, of course, oppose efforts to negotiate the free trade area of the Americas.
Protesters charge that globalization is resulting in a widening gulf between rich and poor. Multinational corporations mowing down everything in their path, trampling workers' rights.
To negotiate the free trade area of the Americas.
In recent years, labor and citizens groups have voiced their concerns about the hidden costs of so-called free trade. International corporations have organized to free themselves from labor, health, and safety regulations through international trade agreements. In response, ordinary citizens have begun to work together to fight the worst effects of NAFTA, the World Trade Organization, and the threatened expansion of NAFTA to the entire Western Hemisphere.
I'm here because I've been on 5 strikes, 1 lockout, and 1 company closing over the last 25 years. So I'm pretty much tired of this kind of corporate behavior. You know, enough is enough.
We feel that as Latinos, you know, we need to start and be the forefront of the whole thing, because we can put, for one example, NAFTA. NAFTA has affected us directly. It's unbelievable just the working conditions that have been created in Mexico.
The latest threat is the free trade area of the Americas. Despite the abysmal track record of NAFTA, the FTAA would extend the worst provisions of NAFTA to 31 more countries.
The North American Free Trade Agreement really has not worked and has not lived up to the pledges and the promises that were made at that time, both in terms of benefiting workers and creating jobs and improving the environment.
The best-known consequence of NAFTA has been the loss of U.S. jobs as corporations relocate production to Mexico. Job flight has accelerated dramatically since NAFTA took effect.
Since the launch of NAFTA between 1994 and 2000, just in the manufacturing sector, jobs that came with benefits with health care and pension, those jobs have been lost. And this is not a minuscule number. I'm talking about 766,000 jobs that have moved out of United States to other countries.
As head of the Garment Workers Union in San Francisco, we certainly saw that NAFTA severely impacted the workforce in the garment industry. After NAFTA, we lost practically the entire industry.
The garment industry is just one of the industries that have moved production abroad. Many of these jobs have been relocated to industrial parks, like this one on the other side of the U.S.-Mexico border. Employment in assembly plants, called maquiladoras, has doubled since NAFTA took effect. But despite the influx of jobs and soaring productivity levels, wages here have actually declined.
Supuestamente el Tratado de Libre Comercio nos iba a beneficiar, ¿sí? Ahorita nosotros, trabajadores de maquiladora, vivimos en casas de cartón. Desgraciadamente, siempre que queremos organizar para un sindicato independiente, blanco, del trabajador, lo primero que hacen los dueños de las maquiladoras es identificar a la gente y la corre.
The problems here go beyond poor working conditions. It's worth taking a closer look at the border region to see what NAFTA has meant for public health and the environment.
What you see over there were the offices.
Cesar Luna of the Environmental Health Coalition points to a lead smelter just south of the border that New Frontier Trading Corporation, an American company, found cheaper to abandon than to clean up. 7 years after NAFTA's promises, the site remains a public health nightmare.
And this whole carcass was the lead smelting operations. Their job was to break the batteries apart, get rid of the acids, extract the lead plaques, and then smelt them so that they could recover the useful lead. And this process is obviously extremely hazardous, and it produces great quantities of hazardous waste. Here you can see how the walls are being chewed away by some of the toxic waste, including the acids, and how some of the dirt, which is also highly contaminated with lead, is already coming out of it.
The issue really is that the lead has gone into the soil. The lead is bioavailable from the soil, and children tend to eat more soil than adults. They play in dirt and all this kind of thing, and they also have more hand-to-mouth activity, so they put more soil into their mouth. So the lead will accumulate in their bone and go into the brain and start impacting the developing nervous system. the effects upon the developing brain and children's learning and learning abilities will be seriously impacted. It's completely inappropriate to have a community either built on top of or quite close to an abandoned smelter like that.
The smelter is part of a cluster of factories that sits just above a workers' residential neighborhood. Runoff from these factories flows directly through the community, endangering all of the people who live there, especially the children.
As you can see, some of this water actually runs from the top of the mesa, which is where we were at a while ago, where the concentration of maquiladoras are. And you can probably see a mixture of contaminants. You will also find traces of industrial waste. And it's just it's a soup, it's a Molotov cocktail in the sense of the amount of and the levels of contaminants that you have here.
Esta agua es sacada de este pozo. Sí está un poco más clara que aquella, pero sigue siendo agua sucia y contaminada. Y este es el agua que ellos usan para lavar su ropa, los trastes, bañarse, todo lo que es servicio.
NAFTA's supporters promised that side agreements on the environment and labor would safeguard against these kinds of abuses. The New Frontier lead smelter is just one example of how these side agreements have failed. But despite the failure, the FTAA would expand the NAFTA model to the entire Western Hemisphere. While reports of widespread pollution and worker abuse have made their way into the press, this is only part of NAFTA's story.
The other half of the story is that it began to let corporations have a lot more powers than they used to have. And one example can be found in NAFTA under Chapter 11.
NAFTA's investment chapter, also known as Chapter 11, lets foreign companies sue governments in a special NAFTA tribunal over policies that the companies consider barriers to trade.
NAFTA Chapter 11 allows individual companies to actually sue governments if they think that their profits are not as high as they ought to have been, if a government action has infringed upon the profits that they expected to earn.
We have a case where California is being sued by a Canadian corporation for over $900 million, almost $1 billion, because the state of California found that there's a chemical MTBE that's added to gasoline as a gasoline additive. It was found that this chemical, MTBE, is very porous in the soil, gets into groundwater supplies. There's very good testing to show it's toxic. California state legislature passes a law phasing out the use of this chemical by the year 2002. The company in Canada that makes the M chemical in the MTBE, they sue under these NAFTA Chapter 11 provisions, they sue the state of California for this law, but it's the U.S. government that has to defend. So in the proceedings, the state of California doesn't even have a representative at the table. It's the U.S. Trade Representative's office. They are going to defend the people of California in this secret tribunal. If we lose, it's over $900 million, rescind the law, allow this chemical to go out into our water supply. We've already got water problems in California.
So we're really worried. Here's the United States in a private tribunal with a private company. California can't even go in and defend its law. And so potentially our health and welfare is threatened by this international trade agreement.
You're talking about basic protection of people's health, of their safety, of their environment, of toxics in our environment. And I don't think the American people believe that when they say they support international trade, that they support international trade that can just beat down the basic environmental protection laws of this country.
And NAFTA Chapter 11 has been used to challenge legitimate environmental and public health regulations of all three North American countries at this point, of the United States and Mexico and Canada. And the very existence of NAFTA Chapter 11 has had a chilling effect on public regulations, where some governments have simply chosen not to regulate in the public interest because they're afraid of a suit from an investor from another country.
Chapter 11 has also been used to target public services for privatization. In another case, the American company United Parcel Service is suing the Canadian government for subsidizing its national postal service. According to UPS, the Canadian subsidies make it harder for UPS to compete in Canada.
The UPS argument, and it's actually being considered in this NAFTA court, their argument is that that's prejudicial against UPS because they want to do express mail service, and the fact that the Canadian government provides express mail service that is housed in Canadian government buildings, delivered on postal trucks with the rest of the mail and all that is an unfair subsidy to the Canadian Postal Service, and that is unfair competition. It's a violation of free trade principles.
A lot of people think that this is outrageous. How could UPS be allowed to sue the Canadian government for having a postal system? But indeed, that's what NAFTA allows.
These policies endanger basic public services we take for granted, like education, health care, and, as the UPS case has shown, even the local post office.
Think of a postal service, we just take it for granted. It's been around a long time, we think, yeah, you know, it's just the old post office. But it is a part of our society, a part of our government, a part of our rights, in a sense, to have mail go everywhere.
The UPS challenge through NAFTA on postal services is based on the notion of services, and therefore, if it's successful, or even if it's considered legitimate for a dispute settlement, means that every single service in Canada is challengeable, from healthcare to education to childcare to elder care to municipal services to prisons. Anything that governments now do that we consider our fundamental rights as citizens to have would be challengeable.
The fear is that the FTAA would expand NAFTA's Chapter 11 to the entire Western Hemisphere. And this tremendously strengthens the hands of multinational corporations against governments.
It's absolutely contrary to the history, the founding, and the principles of this country and the Constitution of the United States of America. And I think, you know, American working people and all American citizens ought to think about that before they throw out the Constitution in the name of a trade agreement that was designed in secret by the most powerful corporations in the world.
The FTAA shifts power to international corporations and weakens state and national governments by extending the provisions of NAFTA's Chapter 11 to 31 more countries and another 400 million people. Despite the dangers, many expect the FTAA to go forward, unless the growing and vibrant movement against so-called free trade becomes strong enough to stop it.
I think what is so potentially powerful about this movement around the worker rights issue, both in terms of the FTAA, the NAFTA, the World Trade Organization, is that it unites working class people with the church, environmental movement, women's movement, and that it is a movement which is asking its own government to do the right thing.
So I think it's really important for everyone who sees this film, for their families and friends, to write to the president, to write to the trade representative, to write to their senators and their representatives in Congress and say, we think this is really dangerous to us as individuals, and we really don't want anything like this investor provision in any international trade agreement.
We need to be talking about this free trade agreement because it's going to be affecting each one of us. It's no longer about that it's a concern of the economist or it's a concern of the employer. It's a concern for every average American, everyone who lives in this country. It's a concern.
We really have to reach out to everybody who's affected by NAFTA and FTA, and in this case it means all the people of the Americas.
There is a strong international solidarity building among the labor movement, and I'm confident that it's going to be very effective.